MASH unit report. How's the health going?
Yeah, obviously we gave him Sunday and yesterday off. I'll get back in there today and kind of see what's going on with Bryson. I know he's not going to be full today, but hopefully his hand's recovering. The rest of the guys, hopefully getting a couple days off will help. Frank's going to be what he is. Like, Frank's a warrior, man. He's been fighting through. He has a stress reaction in his fibula or tibia, and so like it gets very sore. So he hasn't been able to practice for about 2 weeks. I can't see him practicing the rest of the season. He just kind of has to show up for games and ride the bike and get loose. But, like I said, that's just Frank, man. He really thankful for him that he's fighting through some of these injuries.
And JJ and Jasir had procedures done. Any update on that?
Yeah, no, both of them went really well. But now they're just at home healing. Jasir might be at practice this afternoon.
Is this the time of year where you want a week off?
Yeah, we needed it. Yeah, we needed it badly. Just probably more mentally than physically than anything. Just with the travel and the schedule that we had to play. Like I said, nobody else has had to play that. It was brutal. And, the 4 road trips in 33 days, playing 5 top 11 teams, playing your rival, it was nonstop. And I've mentioned, 2 of those trips got screwed up with travel on the way back, where we sat on tarmacs till 5 a.m. and had to sleep in that city and get back late that night on their off days. And so we needed it. Yeah, no question about it.
But after this time off and having to go on a road trip like this, can that help as well, just kind of getting away?
I think so. Like, we've almost played better on the road than we have at home. For whatever reason, I don't know. But we're going to have to play really well on Saturday. Sometimes when you do get on the road, it's just kind of just you. It's your team. Like, you want to stay connected and do some things, and hopefully our team plays as well as we have on the road. But we gotta overcome some things like turnovers and little defensive breakdowns, that have cost us on some of those road swings.
And just what'd you see on film after reviewing it from the Minnesota game?
Yeah, a lot of breakdowns. We're going to watch them here in a minute. Defensively, I didn't think we were great. We had to do some different things and play some different lineups, and play a 2-3 zone, which we put in 2 days before that game. Offensively, I think Minnesota is, terrific in their man-to-man offense, where they're just cutting and passing. That's why they were, number 1 in the country, I think, in assist rate. Averaging over 17 assists in a game. We held them to 9 assists. I think it was their season low. And so, it was something that we had to do to take away, what they excel at. And it was probably an ugly game, because they zoned the whole time too. Both teams are kind of a MASH unit right now. And, I think we made 4 threes in the game, and still won, which I think is, kind of a University of Washington low in a win. So, we'll see.
Can you talk a little bit about your long-term vision for the program? Obviously, with so many young guys that you hope to be back next season, can you talk about where you might just see this team in 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at my track record with all my guys, like, they get better if they stay in our program. I mean, you look at a jump, even Zoom, look at the jump he made freshman to sophomore year. Hannes could make that same jump. Now, who knows, he may jump to the NBA, I don't know. But, players in my program, and I give a lot of credit to my staff, almost all the credit, like with the skill development. And there's so much comfort in knowing the defensive assignments year after year. Offensive execution. You're not learning stuff for the first time. And that's what is hard, not just here. It's hard anywhere with the transfer portal too. Some guys have habits from 4 different coaches. And when you only get them for 9 months to really ingrain those habits can be tough. But, I see Cortland making great strides, JJ and Jasir, huge strides, like Nikola. He just got here in December. Like, he's got a chance to be a really, really good player because offensively he's really talented. I know his percentages shooting-wise, it's not even close to as good of a shooter as he is. And so, all those guys, Wesley, coming back another year, like, he's just going to be better going into his 3rd year in Big Ten play. So, and we got to add some pieces, for sure. Especially shooting the basketball.
Can you talk a little bit about your guard rotation that you have? Obviously, with it, just the injuries being what they are, how have you seen them respond in terms of just fatigue at this point in the year?
Yeah, I think that's probably been some of our mistakes late in games is when guys are tired. We'll have some careless turnovers, or that's like I mentioned, that's when we'll have a defensive breakdown. But good teams, you just can't get tired. If you're going to be a Big Ten player and you're playing those minutes, you can't get tired and you can't have those sloppy plays. But our guard play obviously got shrunk even more last week with Bryson, missing the Minnesota game. But Cortland stepped up. He did. Now, after watching the film, he did some great things, which I love, but there's a lot of stuff he needs to clean up too.
You have a scouting report for Maryland. Obviously, last year they were an NCAA tournament team. This year they've kind of taken a little bit of a step back. Have you seen anything different from them?
Yeah, well, they have a brand new coach and all brand new players, so that's the first thing that's different. They're playing their best basketball right now. I think they play Northwestern tomorrow night. But they've had a couple big wins lately. They're playing with a lot of confidence. They're really athletic. They fly around. They got a point guard, Diggy Coit. I hope I pronounced his name right. One of the most dynamic players in the conference. He had a game of 44 or 45 this year. Probably 5'10", 5'11", but can really, really shoot the basketball and get going. So they're as dangerous a team. And like I said, when you're playing in the Big Ten, doesn't matter who you're playing that day. And anytime you're, traveling all the way to Maryland and playing in that, environment, they'll have a great environment, and it's going to be brutal.
And Cortland Muldrow, he had a breakout performance in the last game. What can you say about how he's adjusted to getting more playing time and more minutes?
He did well last game. That's the only game he's really played a lot more minutes. I thought his energy and defensively, he did what he's supposed to do. He got, some steals. One of his layups, I think Hannes got the steal and pitched it up to him, and he had a good finish. But I just like the tenacity he was playing with. And he's going to keep learning, through, the progression as he gets more minutes. He's just going to get better and better. But like I said, there's still some things that his discipline on the court needs to improve.
And then Hannes, he led your team with 26 points in the last contest. Was that him just taking advantage of his size inside, or you want him to get more aggressive or try to get him more opportunities? What is that kind of thing there?
Both. We did have a size advantage, and he's a tremendous player. He scores almost 20 points every game, and so. But that was one of the advantages we had with, them missing some of their big guys, and so we had to take advantage of that.
Danny, this is kind of a broad question. I know you've had a rash of injuries. I know it takes time to build a program, but 3/4 of the way through the Pac-12 or the Big Ten season. Sorry, old habits. 5-10, probably not where you want to be. What do you see?
Yeah, I see a team that we're on the verge. We were there. Like I said, we've had 78 missed games with injury,
right.
and it's not from guys at the back of our lineup. It's been everybody. It's been Hannes missing 4 games, Wesley missing 6 or 7, Bryson, missing 7 or 8, and so it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge for our staff, and it's been a challenge for our team. Different guys are playing different lineups all the time, and like I said, at the end of the day, you can make all the excuses you want. That's our record. Now I think we played some of the best teams in the country very, very close, down to 2 possession games, including Michigan. Michigan State, it ended up 17. That wasn't a 17-point game if you were at the game, And so, even Illinois and Purdue, we've played good basketball. We're just not quite. We're not quite. I would say, our margin for error is, like I mentioned, very, very small right now. And when we make a mistake, we compound it. Yeah. When we have a bad turnover, it usually leads to a 3. Michigan, the goaltending call doesn't get called, they go down and hit a 3. And we're not quite veteran enough to get over that yet. Okay. And that's kind of what I see a lot on film. And there's been games too where a couple of those games where it's one possession, all of a sudden we're 7 and 8. And that's including playing the toughest schedule in the conference.
You've mentioned turnovers before. Is there something specific you point to, whether it's obviously you guys are a great rebounding team, whether it's 3-point shooting or, I don't know, help defense, just something specific where you look on film and go, we need to get better there?
No, our turnovers, it's just guys trying to do too much. Mm-hmm. It really is. It's guys still trying to hit the home run instead of just making the easy pass. And that's some clips I'm going to show. the times we just make the easy pass and just throw it to the, I said before, like, if we're wearing white jerseys, just throw, if a guy's open, throw him the ball. And when we did that, we're either getting great shots, or we're making them. And so we have to continue to do that. Defensively, it's been like our transition defense this last week was not good. And that's unacceptable for guards that have played as many minutes as that we've had. And not just our guards, our bigs too. And that's where I knew we were tired against Penn State. Even in the first half, like we hadn't done that all year, in all 25 games where a guy's just dribbled down and just laid it up, and it happened 3 possessions in a row. And so, like I said, you can blame tired, you can blame whatever. It's unacceptable. So that's still the stuff that this group needs to, we got to get mentally tougher than that.
Coach, with 5 games left in the Big Ten season, Big Ten tournament, everything kind of resets. Like, I know players and coaches, it's like 0-0. You have a chance to win it all. You can go to the tournament. When you get as healthy as you possibly can at that point, what do you want the identity of this team to look like? What do you envision, like, the ceiling for the guys that can't come back by then?
Yeah, I mean, it'll basically be what we have right now. Like, a lot of these guys, they're already, we've had 6 season-ending injuries, and so they're not coming back. But like I said, when we're playing the right way, but we have to do it consistently for 40 minutes. You can't do it for 34 and expect to beat. Like I said, we got 5 top 11 teams in the country or whatever it is. Like, you're not going to beat those teams if you have 2 minutes each half where you have 3 turnovers in a row, or you have a defensive breakdown and you're giving up threes or scout details. And that's where this group, that's where we have to get better at. And we've tried to recognize it sometimes. We've tried to call some timeouts when I see the one turnover that has led to 3 or 4 in the past, like against Minnesota. I saw it coming with 4.5 minutes left in the first half. We had a breakdown. They hit a 3. They took the lead. We called timeout. We made some substitutions, and we went on a 14-0 run. Now, the 14-0 run had nothing to do with me, but we had to awaken the players and be like, no, we're not doing this again. Like, have some discipline, take care of the basketball, guard your guy, and play with some energy. And then we went on a 14-0 run. And so we have to just continue to be cognizant of those stretches in the game when we're losing our minds a little bit, and that's where you need juniors and seniors. And we don't have a lot of them. Everybody, like, you feel like Zoom because you feel like he's older than he is. He's a sophomore. He's 19 years old. Hannes is 18, 19 years old. All these freshmen, Cortland, he's 18. Like, these are young kids playing in the best conference in the country. Now Frank, Kamari, and Jacob, like, yeah, they're older. Even Bryson Tucker's 19 years old. He's a sophomore, and he's basically a freshman, as I mentioned. He didn't play much at Indiana. So, like, all the experiences that he's getting right now, he could make a huge jump. And so, a lot of it, sometimes you have to go through the experiences and kind of the shortcomings that we've had to go through in order to get to where Michigan and Michigan State and those schools are. Even UCLA, like, UCLA is way older than us. They are. Like, Bilodeau, one of the best in and out players in the conference. Donovan Dent was the #1 point guard in the portal. Sky Clark's in his 4th or 5th year. He's a tremendous 2-way player. Eric Daly, like, he's a grown man compared to our guys. And so, like, and I'm just using UCLA as an example, but, like, that's every team that we play against. But like I said, nobody cares. You're at the Big Ten, you got to play, and our team's got it. At the end of the day, we have to do a better job, of taking care of the things that we can control.
I know some coaches like to say they don't have point guards, they just have guards. They got to do everything. JJ's not one of those who's just a guard. He's a true point.
Yeah.
With JJ out right now, you've got Zoom, who I think you've said before, he's not a true point. Kwamari seems like kind of a combo who can do both. But with not having that true guy that can run point and run the offense, what does it look like, especially when you start getting your guards with 2 and 3 fouls? I mean, who can run the offense? Can Cortland do it? Can Bryson do it? I know you had Desmond earlier this year who could do it as well.
Yeah. No, the only other one that is Cortland that could do it. Cortland, Zoom, and Kamari. And like I said, Kamari's more of a combo, like a 2, like a shooter. And that's where I give Zoom a lot of credit. Like, he's been thrust into that position. Now, he is a ball handling guard. Like you can say true point guard, not like he's best when the ball is in his hands. And you could see it the other night. He had some tremendous passes. And end of shot clock, he's our one guy that can really do it. Navigate ball screens and either score it or make a good decision. And but even Cortland, like we're gonna have to throw Cortland in there because I've mentioned like he has a burst and an athleticism that nobody else on our team has.
Coach, to kind of go back to the youth of the team and the identity there, how difficult do you think it has been this season with obviously a lot of your veteran leadership has kind of come from guys who haven't played in the Big Ten before? You have Frank, but like Kamari and Jacob come from mid-majors, and so like maybe they aren't used to the Big Ten experience so much. Like how difficult do you think that has been this season, and how much of it do you think is just like the overwhelming amount of youth that you have on the rest of the roster?
Yeah, well, it's hard. Like it's hard for Jacob because he didn't play until like 5-6 games ago. So like he's been just standing on the side in a boot all year, and so like it's hard for him to lead. Like I said, he's brand new here too. Kamari's a very quiet kid. He leads by example. But I think Zoom and Frank, like those have been the two guys. They're the most vocal. Got the most energy, like in practice, like even in the film room, like really speaking up. But I do think there was guys that were starting to make progress. Like Hannes has gotten better throughout the year. And he's another lead by example guy. He's probably got to get more vocal, especially when it's demanding the basketball on the offensive end or, defensively talking and things like that. But, our leadership, like I said, it's mostly been, Zoom and Frank from a vocal standpoint. And then Kamari, obviously, from the by example.
When those are your two vocal leaders, obviously Frank is a guy that's not going to be an offense initiator. He's kind of, somebody that relies on other players to get him the ball in those situations. And Zoom, we've talked about how he's still kind of processing those lead guard duties and struggling with some of those turnovers. So, like, when you have those lead by example guys, kind of like where do you turn when you need to kind of get that leveling presence when you are starting to struggle with those turnovers piling up and that sort of thing?
Yeah, and that's where it's got to come from me. That's where I got to call timeout, and sometimes I wish I had more timeouts than they allow us to have. But that's where, like, when the game starts getting really fast, and that's when you start seeing some of our turnovers, or they're more exposed in the last 10 minutes of the game, and our live ball turnovers, that's what's killed us. If you're going 100 miles an hour and you travel or something like that, we have no problem because then we can set our defense and get back. But when you're turning the ball over and they're transitioning the other way and hitting threes, or getting layups, or if we drive and fall down, which we do a lot, and the other team just transitions, and like that's the stuff that we have to negate.
And then I know we've talked a little bit this season about Kamari and his shooting, but with 5 games left at this point, it's a 9 percentage drop from his 3-point percentage last year. Have you guys diagnosed at all what might be going on there, or is it just as simple as just the looks are not falling this year?
No, both. And there's been a lot of times too where our guys will throw the ball to him with 1 second on the shot clock, and he has to just throw up a grenade. That's not his fault. And I wish there was a stat to kind of eliminate those type of threes. But he's probably had about 7 or 8 of those, in the last probably 10 games, where that's hard for anybody to make them. But like I said, there's been time, and it's a different level of athleticism and contesting, at this level. So, we knew it would go down a little bit. But then I think the major thing with his percentages a lot of the times are just teammates just throwing the ball with 1 second on the clock. Yep. We can probably do one more. What time is film? What time is it? I may have got 2 minutes.
How many guys are you suiting up tomorrow? On Saturday?
I don't even know. I don't even know how many guys we got. I think we got 7, or we got 7 in practice. So we're getting ready to practice here today, so we got 7. But we haven't practiced basically 5-on-5 since the beginning of October. So
I've been to practices where you've had managers and coaches out there practicing. Who's the best manager, coach that you have scrimmaging with you?
Oh, I think it depends on the day. Probably Abdul or Quincy, though. Abdul can still get it going a little bit, and Quincy's funny because he still gets competitive out there. But no, it's good. When we do the scout team, obviously, Abdul, if like he'll be Diggy Coit this week, shooting a bunch of threes and all that.
In the half-court shooting competition, who's ahead right now, the players or the coaches?
Coaches, no doubt.
If I ask Zoom, what would he say?
The same. He knows. We make sure they know.
All right, thank you, Coach.
You bet. Thanks, guys.